Welcome to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast with your host, wealth coach Wade Reed.
Hey, what is up, Money Masters? It's Wade Reed here for another episode of the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. And today I have with me a special guest named Ace Allak. Welcome, Ace.
Hey, thanks, Wade. I appreciate you having me.
I'm so glad to have you on today. Guys, I had a really interesting situation. The way I met Ace was like this weird roundabout situation where I picked up a new vehicle. Guys, I'm living in abundance. And so one of my dreams was to have a Rivian R1S for my family. And so I found one at a crazy good deal. And so I'm looking for a couple of things to add to it, rails for the top, possibly a charger for my garage and stuff. And so I find this guy selling some stuff on classifieds. And it turns out to be Ace. Turns out Ace is the husband of one of my friends from high school I haven't seen for 25 years. So you guys all know I'm a believer. So I'm like, okay, God, why in the world did you reconnect me with this woman who I used to have as a friend, who's now married to this cool guy who lives in this really cool place at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. And I used to go up there as a kid to go snowboarding, and I'd go by this place. I'm like, what is up on that little loft over there? Like, there was this cool little bridge that had been built out. There was this curve up around the mountain. And I'm like, there's got to be some cool houses up there. And so randomly, I end up in front of this guy, Ace, and we start talking a little bit about business and stuff. And I'm like, hey, man, have you ever been on a podcast? He's like, yeah, I do podcasts from every once in a while. So I'm like, would you join me on my podcast? I want people to hear your story. I want people to know how you've become successful. And what I really want you guys to listen to today, as Ace tells a bit of his story, is that things don't just, like, wealth isn't often given, it's developed. It's who you are as a person. It's the background that you grow up in. It's the motives that are undergirding from how you grow up oftentimes that cause us to take actions in a certain way that can lead to great success. So guys, Ace, I'm going to share, before you start talking, your public bio. Okay, this is what people, if they just look you up online, they're going to hear something like this. So Ace Allak's a partner at Legacy Mutual Mortgage National Bank, the owner of AK Development, LLC, a development and property investment company that was honored as the Salt Lake County Developer of the Year in 2022. That's a pretty cool accolade. He's also a founder of Christie's International Real Estate here in Utah that started in 2024. And he's going to tell you some of the story, but as of last year, just about a year into business, they had done over $660 million in transactions. And that tells you something. There's something cool going on within that organization and with the leadership of someone like Ace. Okay, it's on track to do close to $1 billion this year. In 2020, Ace launched the MH Allak Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization providing scholarships and aid to underprivileged and immigrant children. Ace is a sought-after housing specialist and a business sales coach, sharing his insights at speaking events and on national media outlets, including NBC, ABC4, KJazz, which is a Utah-based television, and KSL, which is also Utah-based television. So Ace, pretty interesting background, powerful bio. People might be going, oh my gosh, this guy's like crazy successful. And that's true. And so I acknowledge that. Thank you for taking time out of your busy life, managing all these different companies and all the cool stuff you're doing to spend some time to share some of your story about challenges and success with our listeners. So Ace, I want you to share some of your backstory with us. Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I do, Wade, I want to say to the audience what I said to you when we started this podcast, which is I listened to a few episodes before we did this podcast, and I was immediately taken back by your abundance mentality, your sage wisdom that you're giving people, and really what I feel is in your heart, which is to help others and give them something that you've learned. So first of all, I want to say I'm honored to be on this podcast.
Thank you.
When somebody asks you, sometimes you don't know, so you want to investigate, and I was excited and impressed would be an understatement. So thank you. So thank you for having me on. Yeah, gosh, that's a lot when you say it. What's interesting is it sounds like I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I didn't set out to be. My story is one of a lot of failure and getting up behind it. And it's interesting because you brought up this home that we built, which we've been fairly private about, for the most part. And when we first moved in, we had these cleaners that came, the construction cleaners. And the day before we moved, this was around Christmas time, about 2 years ago, there had been like some drywall repairs. So there was dust everywhere. So imagine like the stress of moving day. and you get there and now there's dust on everything. And you're like, gosh, I'm going to move in. How am I going to get to that dust? So I called the construction cleaners, and it was a gal named Teresa. I give her a shout out. Wonderful lady. Still helps us to this day. I don't know that we could function in our home without her. I called her and I didn't know her at the time. And I said, hey, here's what happened. Could you come today and help us clean? And she said, well, I'm in Park City and the weather's not great, but I'll come afterwards. This is on a Saturday, by the way. Mm-hmm. So she shows up at 4 p.m. with her crew, and they come through the house and they start to clean it. So I tell my brother, I said, hey, will you run a Chick-fil-A? Like, we got to eat. Let's run a Chick-fil-A or something. So we go to Chick-fil-A. I offer them food. I say, can I buy you guys dinner? Of course, they say no. I said, well, look, I insist. So we buy them dinner. My brother runs, brings it back, and they immediately take their food and they go out to their car. And so I'm like, no, hold on a second. No, you guys come in here. You sit down at the table and you eat with us. One of them still wouldn't, to give you an idea. Okay. One of them, he just couldn't get there. He was too uncomfortable. He insisted on eating in his car. So they sat there. So we're all sitting around this island, and she goes, can I ask you a question? And I said, sure. And she goes, I have, 7 kids. How do you get a house like this? Mm. And I was embarrassed, taken back, not used to really nice things like that. You know what I mean? Or these kinds of questions a lot. And so I got really quiet and I gave the most honest answer I could give her, which is, you fail a lot. Mm. That was like the realest thing I could say, cornered in an awkward situation in my gut. And that's what my mind goes to is it's this reframing of failure, not being failure. I'm pretty critical of the school systems in the US. I don't have a good solution, so I try not to talk about this a lot because it's a problem I don't have an answer to, right? Mm-hmm. Quite yet. But in school, we're taught that to fail is to be wrong, is to be bad. Here's your bad grade. You messed up. Here's your consequence. Mm-hmm. But as you know, and as a lot of people know, in business, it's either you're winning or you're learning. There is no failure. It's winning or learning. Yeah. You either won or I learned. That's it. And if I could have learned that earlier in my career, could have saved a lot of emotion, because a lot of, as you know, business and success is managing emotion. And that's helped me significantly, right? It's like winning or learning. So I wanted to touch on that for a minute. But I mean, as far as my story goes, like I grew up on the East Coast, the son of immigrants. My dad came in 1964, put himself through college. We grew up, I don't want to say in poverty, but really poor, as he was a student in West Philadelphia, South Philadelphia. He eventually got a job in Washington, D.C., working for the World Bank. Kind of a professor type, ended up with 2 masters and a PhD from Wharton and Penn. So we moved when I was in 7th grade to Virginia, 6th grade. And, I went to college at George Mason University, had a great upbringing. We grew up in a split level home, nothing too crazy. But yeah, before that, when we were in Philadelphia, give you an idea, I remember my parents saved up all this money and rented a car. One time we went to Florida on a vacation, and it was this, you see pictures of it. It's this little Toyota Corolla with cloth seats. And we had only had those, remember those 80s cars with the vinyl seats? Yeah. And the rips in them, they kind of pinch you when you're in shorts, and they were like hot in the summer, super cold in the winter. Like, you almost, for those of you who didn't grow up with that, you almost dreaded getting into the car. Oh, yeah. And everybody had cars that were 10, 15, 20 years old back then. Mm-hmm. Buying for $100, $200. So I had only known vinyl seats. I really didn't even know, a lot about cloth seats. I didn't know leather existed. Mm-hmm. So I remember being in that car and sitting on those cloth seats and being like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. Like, kind of rubbing my face like, oh, feel this cloth seat. So after that, I was probably 11 years old. I would always try to look at people's cars, because if they had cloth seats, I knew they had money. Okay. I didn't even know leather wasn't even a thing, right? Yeah, it was far from that. But I had 2 parents that loved each other. My dad traveled a lot with the World Bank, 6 months a year. Probably said goodbye to him 100 times, during some of those formative years, coming and going. So, but eventually, graduated college, worked a little bit in the startup world, got a job here in Utah. After, a year or 2 off, I went around and surfed a little bit and snowboarded and did all that stuff. And then got a job in energy management. At the same time, I bought a lot on the side, built a spec home. I had a friend that was doing that, sold it and made $30,000 and thought, oh my gosh, I'm retired. I'll never have to work another day in my life. I have $30,000.
When $30,000 meant something, right?
When you're in your 20s, $30,000 meant like,
it's like a year's salary, right?
Yeah, I couldn't, I was done. I was retired.
I remember, but I'm going to pause just for a second because I remember when I was in my undergraduate work at the University of Utah, and I was working at a bank, the local big bank in Utah called Zion's Bank, and I was making like $12 an hour, 24 grand a year, something like that. And I just thought, man, if I could make 50 grand, if I can get a salaried position or something at 50 grand, I'm going to be just set. How naive.
Yeah. I mean, I was probably making about 45 at that job. Okay. Like, you know, and so, yeah, to get a check for 30 grand was life changing. Right.
Totally. Yeah.
So I did what everybody does when they have their first success, right? They assume they did it all themselves. They know everything, and you start multiplying at a rate that you start doing the math and go, well, if I do 10 of these, I'll make $300,000. So I did that. And then the Great Recession hit. So I quit that job and I started my development company, which is still open to this day, AK Development. And I had a really tough time going into the recession, as most people do. We had 23 projects at the time. We were running out of cash. 5 years later of just decline. We avoided bankruptcy, but barely. I remember having to bring money to closing after we built a home or two. I think it happened on a number of them.
Yeah.
And we even had some projects purchased in 2007 that I sold in 2019 for a loss.
No kidding.
Like, so when everybody says it's like all these wins, I'm like, so if you want to know how to buy, I mean, I don't know how you lose money on a piece of land you bought in 2007 and sold in 19. Call me and I'll explain it to you if anybody has any questions. But in the interest of full openness, right, that really happened. And so it took some time to work through some of those things, but we did. And we did it honorably, which was hard to do because people were just letting things go at the time. And
so when you say honorably, you're saying like you kept up with your payments, you didn't default on all your debts and file for bankruptcy.
No, we didn't file for bankruptcy. We did not keep up on all of our debts at the time. We did have to deed back some of the land to banks but we were communicative. We were negotiating. Yeah. And on the one that we had to, they would not let us negotiate. I mean, we were so upside down, they wouldn't let us negotiate unless we missed payments, which tells you how broken the system was at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so I actually remember calling my dad and saying, Dad, this is what they said. And just thinking that he would be so disappointed that here I was going to, miss payments, right? With like not keep an obligation. And of course he was really kind and understanding about it and told me he loved me anyway and just do what I got to do. So I think I needed that permission from him at that time to do that. So no, I wish it was that clean. It wasn't. Okay. It was, I mean, look, you look at the Great Recession, and that was the greatest economic event since the Great Depression.
Yeah.
I mean, the two biggest in the last 150 years. So in hindsight, it was a big deal. So we navigated it. At the time, I ran out of money in 2011, and I was friends with one of the owners of Vivint, what is now Vivint. And he wanted me to go sell door-to-door alarms. Or I had, a small part of this little mortgage brokerage that the loan officer started making money because rates had dropped. So out of survival, I was either going to sell door-to-door alarms or I was going to do refinances. I was dating my wife at the time and I didn't want to move. So I did refinances and I saw the opportunity in mortgage really quickly. These guys were making a lot of money.
Yeah. And
they were whining, Wade. I mean, they literally like, this business is the worst. I'm like, you guys have no idea. I mean, to make, $20,000 or $30,000, I had to sign my life away on a loan and try to sell something. These guys were making that money at the time without any risk.
Basically, people coming to them saying, hey, I'm going to get my lower rate, refinance my house, refinance my house, right?
Mm-hmm. And it was purposeful because at the time they were FHA streamlined. So people's balance didn't go up. Their payment would drop. They would skip a payment and they'd keep their escrow refund. So it was one of the few times in lending history where it was really helping people. Yeah. Right. So it felt good. So I did that, experienced some success there, and really just kept the development company open as an arm to work through these projects. So fast forward a number of years, we did really well in mortgage. I was fully committed to that, and then started, development company kicked up again organically. A number of years later, started buying commercial property.
Yeah,
using the money I was making in mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And then that portfolio started to build in 2017. I was a business coach at the time for loan officers, realtors. A few years ago, I felt strongly that there was not a brokerage that I could refer them to. I'd refer them to a brokerage and they would be told the wrong thing, told how to do business the wrong way. I want to be clear on something. I did not want to start that brokerage. I genuinely felt like it was a need. I needed it like I needed a hole in the head.
So wait, as a lender, you wanted to be able to send these people who are refinancing their homes or people that you were coaching in lending and in real estate, like you didn't really have a place to send people that needed to buy or sell a house?
No, I couldn't refer like realtors who I was coaching at the time.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't refer them to a brokerage to work.
Got it. Okay.
Or I would, and then the result would be disappointing consistently. And frankly, the bar was so low in that industry. I really felt strongly that it needed to be brought up via some professionalism, via some core values, via some correct training. And I had some success coaching some real estate agents. I'd taken some from, $70,000 a year, 80,000 to 300 plus. I had a dozen of those or half a dozen of those that I had worked with. And so I saw the changes it was making in their lives, speaking openly on that. So it started as an idea to open up next door. I could just go speak maybe, twice a month. We could coach them up a little bit, but then it evolved. I hooked up with a couple of partners, some business partners, Matt Magnotta, Sam Cubis, and Ben Fisher. And we started Christie's. The opportunity came about. It was like, you and I meeting seemed meant to be.
Yeah.
And then it really took on a life of its own. So those are my three categories. So we got financing, mortgage bank, development company, land development, and then the real estate brokerage.
Yeah.
So that's how it all came about.
I guess what I'm hearing is this idea of a serial entrepreneur. Not everyone who's a serial entrepreneur really sets out to become. It's not really what they intend to become. It's just that they recognize opportunities and they're willing to say yes to those opportunities to solve the problems that you were seeing. For example, the brokerage that didn't exist to provide the right training for those people you were coaching. Got to solve that problem. People are needing help with refinancing mortgages. Well, I'm going to jump in and be one of the people who does that and help accomplish the intended outcome of freeing up cash flow and providing a better future for people. And now with Christie's just taking off, there was clearly a need for that. And the market that you're in is a little bit higher value market than your kind of typical home, right? These are $2+ million homes in the Park City area.
Correct.
And that buyer of those types of homes need a little more sophistication, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I mean, every buyer in real estate. Now, I want to clarify, I'm not a realtor. I'm a founder of the company, but I'm not a realtor, nor am I licensed day to day. The average buyer in Park City and Deer Valley is mostly self-employed, and it's still about 70% cash.
Yeah.
However, sometimes the least qualified are the most demanding, right? So it can be your more difficult buyers, your lower end buyers that can require more time. That's what's ironic. Now, having said that, Utah as a whole, I mean, the average price point in Salt Lake County now is into the 600,000. Like we're officially, a legacy state. So I don't know that there's anything inexpensive in any of our counties right now. Weber, Salt Lake, Wasatch, Summit, Utah County, everything costs a lot of money, especially with the interest rates as high as they are. Affordability is a real item on this. So I think it ended up being a bit of a growth pocket because when interest rates are high, people tend to pay more with cash, which grew that segment. Yeah. Not to mention the amount of wealth that was created, post-COVID or during COVID is just astronomical. For the few that made it, it really did. So that 8-10 million plus home really hasn't gone down much. People are still buying them.
Yeah.
But we are opening up an office on 9th and 9th in Salt Lake.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And we're going to open one up in Utah County. So those will be opened up, this winter is what we're shooting for by December.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not just serving the luxury market, but the regular market with this better value system for how to do the business of real estate.
What's interesting with that is we were just talking about this because we've been on this marketing journey. And I'm going to tell you something that I know is controversial and some people may disagree with. But we were really we hired this branding expert and we were looking at what does the word luxury really mean? What is luxury? And luxury to me means it's a premium experience. So for example, to me, when you go to Chick-fil-A or somewhere like that and every person answers you with, it's my pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
That's a luxury experience. And anybody who wants to argue with that, I can show you their numbers and I can show you the lines in the drive-thrus. And I'll tell you, they're making, luxury money, right? As the owners of Chick-fil-A, because they're providing a real luxury service. So to me, a luxury experience is an ethical obligation. I think people, if you come into my home and I offer you water and I say, hey, do you want it cold or room temp or would you like ice?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's an ethical obligation to show care for a guest in my home.
Yeah.
And so I have a bit of a different view on what that means. My son, when he was 4 years old, the 2-year-old had slammed a door on his finger and almost cut off his finger. So we took him to the hospital and we got it figured out. So we found the best finger, hand doctor we could to get it attached. And he was little. And I remember going to that person's office, and respectfully, he was amazing. Right. Mm-hmm. And going in and, my son was scared. He was probably 4 or 5 years old. And we walked in and seeing that, it had that, ultraviolet lighting, kind of low ceilings, a really old desk. And he was intimidated, scared. Like, it didn't make him feel more welcome. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, if you just took, $10,000, $20,000, painted the place, put in a new desk. I mean, this guy's been in business for 30 years. I know he's got the funds to do it. I get the desk still functions, but make people feel more comfortable, especially these kids, right? So to me, that type of thing is, in my opinion, an ethical obligation.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you withhold it, to using your words, it's you're kind of withholding some abundance there, right? Mm-hmm. It's not even about investing to make more money. It's about investing to make a child feel more comfortable when they walk in. So I feel the same way in real estate. I think everybody deserves a great experience.
I love that. So defining the word luxury as the ethical obligation to help somebody feel comfortable and confident in the experience they're having and the service you're providing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And it has less to do with how much somebody spends.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that. So I'm curious about, and we just have a couple minutes here.
Sure.
But you and I were talking about the word and versus or, and living in a place of and, where I can do this and that. I can be a good father, I can be a good husband, and I can build wealth, and I can serve my community. Tell me about that. Dealing with the pressures of building a business and the responsibilities that come with that, and still being able to live in this world of and fulfilling the commitments you've made to these other important people in your life.
Yeah, it's a concept called the genius of and versus the tyranny of or.
Yeah.
It's a concept called the genius of and versus the tyranny of or. And it was actually created by a Harvard professor. Mm-hmm. And they interviewed, the way I learned about it was they interviewed the CEO of Vivint, a guy named David Bywater, who went to Harvard. I think he got his MBA there, or his JD. I can't remember. But so he went to Harvard, and during an interview one time, they asked him, they said, listen, what was your biggest takeaway from Harvard? And he said, well, it was this professor who the whole semester would harp on that concept of the genius of and versus the tyranny of or. And the idea is that if I say, well, we all have stories that we grew up with. That's very Anthony Robbins, right? Divorce your story and marry the truth, but we have stories based on how we're raised, what somebody told us, what a teacher may have said to you, what a friend may have said, your experiences, your observations. And we've developed these stories about how the world works or how life works. And those have a lot of ors in them, mm-hmm. And being a wealth coach, the danger of poor pride, the idea that to be wealthy or to have a lot means that you must have stepped on somebody to get there. You must have compromised your morals at some point. I mean, on some level, I was raised that way. Mm-hmm. I think all of us unwind it. And I've had to unwind a lot of those stories in order for me to see what's possible. Because if you can't see what's possible, what are you aiming for? It's like, it's kind of like you're taking one of those lasers. You ever see those star lasers? They go up like way up into the sky, but you're putting a ceiling on it, right? you don't know what you're shooting for unless you can remove those stories. And now you can look up at the sky. So that was a key tactical item. What you learn with me, Wade, is I really, can I speak freely?
Of course, yes.
I really can't stand rah-rah coaching sessions where everybody goes in a room, gets all excited, gets motivated for a day, goes home, and 3 days later, they're doing the exact same thing they were doing before. One of my frustrations growing up is I like tactical, real, applicable ways to take good information. Now, what does that mean? How do I apply that day to day? And that was one of the reasons I went on the coaching journey. And I was really lucky to have some good mentors who taught me that. And this is a tactical way that you can apply that concept day to day. So, for example, you're a father, you have 6 kids?
Right.
Okay. So you know this. A lot of people will say, well, I care more about spending time with my family than I do work. So I'm going to make that a priority. And, it's not as important to me to create wealth, right? Because I want to focus on that. That would be a great example of an or. I can either be really successful at work or I can be a good father.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's reframe that same question as an and. I can be really successful at work and I can be an incredible father.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Well, now we got to figure out how. How are we going to do that? Well, I need leverage. Means I probably need to hire somebody because I need to replicate my time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I better learn how to hire people. What book am I going to read? Who am I going to, so it opens up pathways in your mind that force you to go down roads of how am I going to do it? And it's a key thing. I mean, to me, that's like a train track, those train track analogies where it's 1 degree, but you end up somewhere completely different.
Oh yeah.
So that, to me, that's what the genius of and versus the tyranny of or. I mean, to this day, I have to reset it all the time. I go, well, hold on a second. You're kind of doing the or thing right now.
Yeah.
How do you do the and?
I think the question you asked that you said before is how. I want to be a good father and I want to build wealth, build my business, be a good community, church member, all that stuff. Instead of can I do those things, which is stuck, an either or, yes or no, how can I? If we just add the word how in front of the word can.
Yeah, how
now,
can I?
Boom, all right, the brain starts working. So that's an invitation to all you listeners out there. So shift your question. Instead of can I, how can I? And start working on it. Take an action. One of the things I came across one of your clips on your Instagram where you were talking about being a data guy. And you're like, man, here's the numbers. Over 80%, I think it was 88% more likely to accomplish a goal if you write it down. So why wouldn't everyone just write it down? If the numbers tell us that you're 88% more likely to accomplish your goal by writing it down, what holds us back from writing it down? And so I want you to comment just briefly on that as we wrap up today as a very practical outcome. Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, a little bit of context on that. So you say 80+%, and then I had one of my top salespeople fact check me. They were like, you always say that. And then they did it at one time in a group and they said, actually it's 88%. And so now I'm proud of my 88% because I didn't want to be wrong. But yeah, it is 88% more likely to work if you write it down. And the reason is most of our decisions are made in our subconscious. What's interesting about our subconscious mind is, astronaut goes to space and comes down after 2 weeks. They have muscle atrophy. Mm-hmm. They can't walk. You hold them and they're, their legs kind of collapse. What's interesting is even anybody can Google this. The most they say we're using of our brain from our conscious mind is, 15 to 18%. Let's say it's 20%. Most hang around 11, 12% is what they say we're using of our conscious mind. Yeah. When you do an EEG of the subconscious mind, it's fully active, has no atrophy, no dormancy, which means it's working all the time. So when you write things down like that, we don't want to be dishonest with ourselves. We don't want to be liars to ourselves. You are programming your subconscious mind that I'm going to get to that. I'm going to do that. So you'll make subconscious decisions to get there. But look, I'm a tactical guy. Like I'm an engineer. My education is in engineering. We're in banking. We're in underwriting. Everything is tactical. And so this is a tactical tool. And some people say, oh, it's really foo-foo. It's like, oh, write it down and it'll happen. Well, yeah, it does. Like where science meets. And I love that you keep bringing in God and religion to this because people say it's like God or science. I actually think the two are so harmonious.
Mm-hmm.
I think one feeds the other. And I think God works through science. And I think in these situations, there are great examples of that. You have a wonderful example of what is a very tactical item mixed with something that maybe is a little bit more spiritual or mystical in terms of how it gets there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where I sit on that. I'm glad to hear you're watching that. So yeah, my Instagram is my name, Aceallak on Instagram. Feel free to give it a follow.
Yeah. Thank you guys. So an invitation to go do that. Ace has got some great content as a business coach over the years and as a great, successful businessman himself. This is a real deal. This isn't just, people blowing smoke. This is real success through real failure, which we don't really view as being bad, but being a learning experience, right? So failure is learning. It's how we grow and develop as quickly as possible. So the mantra is fail fast.
Mm-hmm.
Get to success by failing fast. Ace, thanks so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Yeah, it's an honor, Wade. Thank you. You're running an excellent, purposeful podcast here. And if there's anything I can do to help you, please don't hesitate.
We appreciate that. I think I'd like to have you on for another episode if you are willing.
Yeah, of course. But man, whatever I can do to help.
Okay, we'll plan that out. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day. Love you. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you in the next episode.
All right, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. We hope the insights from today's episode help you streamline your finances and grow your wealth stress-free. For show notes from today's episode and more tips on creating a comprehensive wealth-building plan, visit moneymasterycoaching.com. Remember, financial freedom is attainable. Until next time, keep accelerating towards your goals. See you on the next episode.